to Coup de Loo. In 1016, the Anglo-Saxon king Edmund Ironside had risen to power during one of England's most turbulent periods. His brief reign of 7 months was marked by constant battles against Danish invaders led by Canute the Great. Edmund had earned his nickname Ironside through fierce combat and seemingly unbreakable resolve on the battlefield, but no amount of armor could protect him from the humiliating fate that awaited him. On November 30th, 1016, Edmund retired to his private chamber in Oxford to use the royal privy. The medieval toilet was a simple wooden seat positioned over a pit or cesspit. What the 26-year-old king didn't know was that an assassin had already infiltrated this most vulnerable space. Hidden in the darkness below, the killer waited silently with a sharpened blade. As Edmund sat down and exposed his most private areas, the assassin struck. According to 12th century chronicler Henry of Huntingdon, a dagger was thrust upward through the privy hole, driving deep into the king's bowels and internal organs. The sudden searing pain caused Edmund to cry out, but the damage was already catastrophic. Blood poured from the wound as the assassin escaped through underground passages. Guards rushed in to find their mighty warrior king collapsed beside the privy, clutching his lower abdomen as life drained from him. The blade had severed major blood vessels and punctured intestines. Edmund's face contorted in pain as he struggled to comprehend the dishonorable attack. Within minutes, infection began spreading through his abdominal cavity. No battlefield surgeon could save him from this wound. The king, who had survived numerous sword and axe blows in honorable combat, died hours later in agony, killed not on the glorious battlefield but on a toilet, stabbed from below while in his most vulnerable position. His assassin was never caught, though many historians believe it was orchestrated by his rival Canute, who became king immediately after. The Royal Toilet Tragedy. On October 25, 1760, the 77-year-old monarch George II of Great Britain began what seemed like an ordinary morning at Kensington Palace. The king was partially blind in one eye and increasingly hard of hearing, but still maintained rigid daily routines. At precisely 6 a.m., he rose from his bed, drank his customary cup of hot chocolate, and retired to his private chamber to use his close stool, a wheeled chamber pot disguised in an elegant wooden cabinet. The king's German valet stood nearby as protocol demanded, but remained outside the doorway for privacy. Minutes later, a sudden heavy thud echoed from within the chamber. The valet rushed in and discovered the mighty ruler of the British Empire collapsed on the floor beside his toilet. George II lay motionless, a small cut on his face bleeding onto the ornate carpet. Palace staff carried the king to his bed while messengers raced to summon Princess Amelia, his daughter. The monarch's breathing grew increasingly labored. His pulse weakened with each passing minute. Before the princess could arrive, George II had already slipped away, dying not on the battlefield or amid royal ceremony, but during his most private morning ritual. Dr. Frank Nichols performed the post-mortem examination. What he discovered explained the sudden collapse. The king's aorta, the main artery carrying blood from his heart, had ruptured, spilling blood into the pericardium, the sac surrounding his heart. The pressure had crushed the heart, making it impossible for it to continue pumping. Medical science now recognizes this as an acute aortic dissection, a catastrophic tear in the arterial wall. In a final undignified detail, George II's own burial instructions were carried out. The sides of his coffin were removed so his remains could mingle with those of his deceased wife Caroline, their royal dust becoming one in death's ultimate intimacy. Plenty of fish. On December 1st, 1135, the 67-year-old King Henry I of England was at the height of his power. The fourth son of William the Conqueror had ruled England and Normandy for 35 years with ruthless efficiency. That evening, Henry was staying at his hunting lodge near Lyon-la-Forêt in Normandy. The royal kitchen prepared a feast featuring his favorite delicacy, lampreys, primitive eel-like fish with circular tooth-filled mouths that attached to prey like living suction cups. Henry's royal physicians had repeatedly warned him about his dangerous obsession with these creatures. The king suffered from recurring gout, and his physicians believed lampreys worsened his condition. According to the chronicler Henry of Huntingdon, they had explicitly forbidden him from eating the fish. But Henry was not a man who took orders, even from medical experts. That night, as recorded by Matthew Paris, the king ate voraciously of lampreys despite all warnings. Witnesses described how he consumed portion after portion, ignoring concerned glances from his courtiers. Within hours, the first symptoms appeared. Severe stomach pains gripped the monarch. His face flushed with fever as toxins from the contaminated fish spread through his bloodstream. By morning, Henry was delirious. The king who had conquered Normandy and established England's treasury system now writhed on his bed, clutching his abdomen. Vomiting and diarrhea quickly led to severe dehydration. His royal physicians tried desperately to purge the poison with herbal remedies, but the damage was too extensive. After 4 days of intense suffering, Henry I died on December 5th. The post-mortem examination revealed a disturbing detail. The person who extracted the king's brain reported becoming violently ill immediately afterward and died within days, suggesting the lamprey toxin remained potent even after death. The mighty king's last meal had become his executioner, transforming the fearsome lion of justice into a victim of his own appetite. Killed by Lintel. On August 5th, 882, the young King Louis III of West Francia was celebrating his recent victory against Viking invaders in northern France. At just 17 years old, he had already proven himself a capable military leader, having repelled Norse raiders from his kingdom. Louis was staying at a royal estate near Tours when he spotted a young woman crossing the courtyard outside his window. According to the annals of Saint-Vaast, the king's interest was immediately captured by the girl's beauty. She was the daughter of a local noble, and when she noticed the king watching her, she quickened her pace toward her father's residence. Louis, perhaps emboldened by his recent military triumphs, decided to pursue her. He called for his horse to be brought immediately. The king mounted his steed with haste, not bothering with his usual protective headgear. As the girl disappeared into a low doorway of a nearby building, Louis spurred his horse forward at full gallop. The chase had become a game, one the king was determined to win. Witnesses described how he leaned low over the horse's neck as he approached the narrow entrance. What Louis failed to notice was the height of the stone lintel, the horizontal beam spanning the doorway. At his speed, there was no time to adjust. The king's skull struck the solid stone beam with tremendous force. The impact made a sickening crack that echoed across the courtyard. Louis was violently thrown backward off his horse, landing motionless on the ground. Blood pooled quickly around his shattered skull. Royal guards rushed to his aid, but the damage was catastrophic. The king's skull had fractured in multiple places, fragments of bone driving into his brain. Within minutes, the heir to the Carolingian dynasty began having seizures. By nightfall, Louis III was dead, not from a Viking sword or political assassination, but from a moment of youthful impulse and a doorway too low for a galloping horse. Fatal fall from a palace window. In September 1197, Henry of Champagne, the 31-year-old ruler of the Crusader Kingdom of Jerusalem, was at the height of his power. As the nephew of both Richard the Lionheart and Philip II of France, Henry had established himself as a formidable political figure in the Holy Land. He resided in an impressive stone palace in the coastal city of Acre, with windows overlooking the Mediterranean Sea. On the morning of September 10th, Henry was preparing to meet with Amalric of Lusignan, the ruler of Cyprus. Witnesses later described how the count paced near the large, arched windows of his upper chamber. The windows had low stone balustrades rather than glass, a common feature in the warm Mediterranean climate. Henry's court dwarf, often referred to as Scarlet in chronicles, was present in the chamber, entertaining his master before the important diplomatic meeting. According to the chronicler Roger of Howden, Henry leaned against one of the window balustrades while watching arriving ships in the harbor. What happened next occurred in mere seconds. The stone railing, weakened by salt air and inadequate maintenance, gave way under his weight. Henry lost his balance and tumbled backward through the open window. The drop was over 40 feet to the stone courtyard below. Scarlet, seeing his master falling, lunged forward and grabbed at Henry's flowing sleeve in a desperate attempt to save him. The dwarf's weight was insufficient to halt the fall. Instead, he was pulled out the window as well, still clutching the fabric. The two bodies plummeted together, with the smaller man landing directly on top of Henry. The impact shattered Henry's spine and skull. Court officials rushed to the courtyard to find the count still breathing, blood pooling around his broken body. Scarlet, who had survived the fall by landing on his master, screamed for help. Physicians were summoned, but within minutes, Henry of Champagne was dead, his fall made worse by the very servant who had tried to save him. The throne that betrayed its king. In 1063, the powerful monarch Bela I of Hungary was holding court at his summer palace in Domos, near the bend of the Danube River. Bela had seized the Hungarian throne 3 years earlier, defeating his brother Andrew I in battle. Known for his physical strength and military prowess, the 47-year-old king had earned the fear and respect of nobles throughout Central Europe. That warm summer day, Bela had assembled his court to receive foreign dignitaries and settle important matters of state. The great hall was filled with Hungarian nobles and visiting ambassadors. At the far end stood the king's magnificent wooden throne, elaborately carved with symbols of royal power and raised on a platform to emphasize the monarch's elevated status. As the proceedings began, Bela strode confidently across the stone floor toward his seat of power. Courtiers bowed as he passed. The king ascended the platform steps and turned to face his assembled subjects before sitting down. According to the Chronicle of Simon of Keza, written 2 centuries later, what happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. As the full weight of the king pressed down upon the wooden throne, a sharp cracking sound echoed throughout the hall. Supports that had been improperly constructed or deliberately sabotaged suddenly gave way. The throne collapsed completely, sending the king crashing to the floor amidst splintered wood and torn decorative fabrics. The fall itself might have caused only embarrassment, but jagged wooden fragments pierced Bela's body in multiple places. One particularly large splinter drove deeply into his abdomen, lacerating his internal organs. Blood quickly soaked through his royal garments as courtiers rushed forward in panic. Physicians were summoned immediately, but the internal damage was catastrophic. Infections set in within hours. For 3 days, the king lingered in agony, his condition steadily worsening despite desperate medical efforts. On September 11th, Bela Wennis died, killed not by an assassin's blade or enemy army, but by the very symbol of his authority, his own royal throne. The prince who sank the White Ship on November 25th, 1120, William the Aetheling, the 17-year-old heir to the English throne, was preparing to return to England after a diplomatic visit to Normandy. As the only legitimate son of King Henry I, William represented the future of Norman rule in England. The young prince was handsome, well-educated, and already showing the political acumen that would one day make him king. That evening at the port of Barfleur, William and his entourage of around 300 nobles, knights, and courtiers boarded the White Ship, a vessel considered the finest in the royal fleet. King Henry had already departed on another ship hours earlier. Before setting sail, the prince ordered 3 casks of wine to be distributed among the passengers and crew. According to chronicler Orderic Vitalis, William and his companions became increasingly intoxicated as they waited. The ship's captain, Thomas Fitzstephen, was similarly drunk when he finally gave the order to depart after nightfall. The prince and his friends issued a boisterous challenge to overtake the king's ship despite its head start. Witnesses on shore described the crew rowing with reckless speed as they pushed away from the harbor, many of them too inebriated to maintain proper coordination. In the darkness, just outside the harbor, the White Ship struck a submerged rock called Quillebeuf with tremendous force. The impact tore a hole in the port side of the vessel. Freezing November seawater rushed in, quickly destabilizing the ship. Panic erupted among the drunken passengers as the vessel began to capsize. A small boat was quickly lowered, and William was safely placed aboard. But as the craft pulled away, Prince heard the screams of his half-sister Matilda, still trapped on the sinking ship. Against the pleas of his guards, William ordered the boat to return. As they approached the listing vessel, dozens of desperate passengers tried to climb aboard the small rescue craft. It immediately capsized, plunging everyone into the frigid channel waters. Weighed down by heavy winter clothing, William disappeared beneath the dark waves. By morning, only one person had survived the disaster, a butcher from Rouen who clung to a piece of wreckage throughout the night. The royal heir's body was never recovered. If you want to see more videos like this, click the video on screen now and make sure to subscribe.